This is Lincoln Stoller of MindStrengthBalance.com speaking on the question of 5 things you can do to endure the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. I should introduce myself. I am a physicist and a neuropsychologist or neurologist of sorts, and a hypnotherapist and a clinical counselor and a software entrepreneur at different stages of my life. And I don't think it's a good way to confront or navigate the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, to thinking of them as 5 problems or 5 solutions, but rather as a holistic situation that requires a kind of spinning balance. It's not a static system with 5 different points that need to be weighed correctly. So I'm going to run down some things. Success and failure, necessary parts. Being creative, absolutely. Emotional is part of being sensitive and aware. Persistent is the same as being determined. And intuitive, flexible, and avoiding compromise. So let me explain those things. So success and failure is what it takes to create a new idea that works in the marketplace of ideas or commodities. And it's not something you can avoid, but becoming depressed and elated is your option. And it's the natural inclination of people in their response to success and failure. But as an entrepreneur, or we might call leader, you can't be taken to extremes. You might appreciate them, but you need to temper your reactions to maintain the center, because there are always going to be people in this dynamic situation that need to be centered. Partly you, but those around you. Being creative is sometimes associated with having a poor memory, but I think it's better to understand it as being unfettered by memory, because creativity is an extension of what you know and remember to what you can imagine, suppose, and explore. You have a past, but you don't have to live in your past. You have to take, like clay, your memories and reform them. And that includes your relationships to people and obligations. Everything is plastic, and you need to become a sculptor of all things, energetic and material. Being emotional gets a bad rap as being vulnerable or weak, but being emotional really means being aware of the breadth of things and being responsive. And as a result, you're not too analytic. You're kind of intuitive, and you're kind of soft and vague, yet committed to your feelings. So you need to be committed, you need to have feelings, you need to be sensitive, but you don't need to be overwhelmed. So there are a bunch of contradictions in being an entrepreneur. There's being sensitive but not overwhelmed. There's having success and failure and accepting them both but not being taken to extremes. There's having a memory of details and past behaviors, but being creative in changing them and imagining others. Back to creative success and failure. All ideas are subject to positive and negative with their associated emotions. You need to be persistent, obviously, which sort of means determined and stubborn, and that's associated with being obdurate and not seeing the signals. And you have to do both. You have to be obdurate and you have to be flexible. It's part of navigating creation. You have to be intuitive, in addition to being factual, but intuitive is more important because you're dealing with the future and what hasn't yet happened. So facts are really, extrapolations into similarities that you don't want to be stuck in, because that's the idea of being creative. You're connected to reality, but you're not stuck in the past. it's important to avoid compromise. This was Chris Voss's story in what's it called? Never Split the Difference is the name of his book. And what he's saying is a compromise is two alternatives, neither of which are understood, and a resolution which satisfies neither. So when you get into a situation that calls for compromise, and there are many, every time there is development, there's going to be a necessity to consider alternatives. You want to create the new vision of what the conflict is saying. So there's a buyer and a seller. There's somebody who wants the future value, and there's somebody who wants the present money. And the two have to be balanced. You have to satisfy both because they're saying there are two ways to look at the situation. So whenever you, as an entrepreneur, are in the position to manage that, you have to see it from both points of view and try to work both points of view toward a situation where there's a dynamic balance, an understanding, and a communication between the buyer and the seller, the manufacturer and the consumer, the person responsible for erecting the idea, the engineer, and the architect of the design. The word resolve is interesting because it means two things. It means to solve, resolve, or it also means to be static and faithful, committed to an idea. So the basic point I want to make is that there's a full of contradictions in this position, and you have to balance them. There's going to be elation and depression if you allow it, but don't let it get the better of you. You can't realize anything that you don't imagine, and it applies to any of this. So your weakness and your strength, you have to imagine your way out, imagine the resolution, imagine the dissolution of conflict, whereas you know success and failure and conflict are part of the growth and change. So I don't say that there are 5 things to do to navigate the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. There is a whole balancing act, sort of juggling. You have to keep all the balls in the air. They were success, failure, creativity, emotional sensitivity, being persistent, intuitive, flexible, and when I said avoid compromise, I mean insightful. So those are my quick survey of what you can do to contain the energies of creation. My website is mindstrengthbalance.com. I write a lot, I speak a lot, I offer coaching, therapy, and counseling. And I have a free blog you can subscribe to, and a paid one that puts out more frequently. So I encourage you to connect with me and take this further into the realms of personal growth and project management and family insight. All of these things, they're all parts of being human. Thanks. Good luck.